Okay, I'm going to start a new series. I have thought a lot about this, and the last time I really did any sort of social media stuff was back in December, January timeframe, back when we had lots of snow and stuff. I kind of did a challenge for myself where I just wanted to post on social media consistently every day for 30 days. Obviously, that didn't quite happen the way that I wanted it to because of all sorts of things, but I did 30 posts and I was made sure I did 30 in the course of about a month and a half. At this point, I'm feeling like, when I do posts on social media that I talk about my gifts and coming into them and all of that stuff, figured I'd talk about that. I'd also talk about some stories that I've accumulated over the years of people that I've helped or things that I've learned. So, welcome. This is brand new and it's a little nerve-wracking, but here we go. So, I'm going to start with my gifts and my calling. Over like 12 years ago, I had this strong urge to bring my gifts to the world. And I started by creating a website called These Words Heal. It's since been taken down, but that was stories of like my own spiritual journey. Had a couple of other people join me on that. But it was kind of like my way of sharing a little bit about what's going on in my life. Kind of maybe getting my feet wet, but I didn't really tell many people about it. I wanted to kind of be a secret because I didn't really want to come out as this is who I am. So it was done under an alias for the longest time. I didn't go very far with that, but that was kind of my first, dipping my toes into this waters. So a little bit about me. These gifts have been around ever since, well, not all of them, but I've had many of them ever since I can remember. I remember the very first time I saw a ghost. It was in bed. I woke up and there was a woman standing over me, all in blue, but bright, almost a white blue colored light. I couldn't see her face. She had long brown hair and it scared me. I was like 8 at the time. So of course it was scary. I, at that point, couldn't sleep in my own room by myself because seeing that stuff is not a fun experience as a child, especially when and this is nothing against my parents. I think as parents, we try to keep our children, we don't want our children to be scared. I did the same thing with my son. I see ghosts, I see those things, but when things came up like that with my son, rather than allowing him to be afraid of something that really you don't need to be afraid of, I kind of told him, oh yeah, don't worry about it. Nothing's there. And so when I was 8, when you're growing up, those things just don't exist. Like we as parents try to protect our children from it. Looking back, especially with my own son, I'd probably go about it differently. And I will probably, any grandchildren or nieces and nephews that come to me moving forward, I'll go about it differently because now what I understand and know is completely different. So, but yeah, that was kind of like my first ever experience. So the first thing that happened is I saw things like I've always heard, ever since I can remember, I've always heard. I can remember being a little girl and hearing somebody upstairs in the house that I grew up in, and there was literally nobody around. Everybody would be outside and I'd be in the basement or something like that. So I knew that I was hearing things that weren't physically there. But this isn't really about ghost stories. It's just kind of, where it started with me. When I got into high school, I had an amazing group of friends and I learned more. And in high school, I started to see auras and really understanding how to manipulate energies. And, when you're surrounded by people that don't think you're crazy because of it, it allows for a little bit more exploration. And so that was high school. In my 20s, it was really like I had my son when I was 23. And so my 20s were really spent just kind of in that mommy survival mode. My spiritual gifts, they came, like I got another gift in my 20s. Um, it wasn't something that I was pursuing. Um, the newer gift that I got when I was in my 20s was probably what I would deem the most frightening gift of all, in the fact that I started to be able to sense when people are close to dying. And it started right after my son was born. Somebody that I grew up with in my childhood. See, here's the thing is that I'm still connected with some people, and I don't necessarily want to freak people out. And some of these stories I've never actually told to anybody. So if you can identify who you are, you can always reach out to me and talk to me about it. I'm trying my best to keep the stories anonymous so that this stuff is kind of it's near and dear to people. Like the stuff that I do is very emotional. Um, and it's sometimes hard to swallow for people. So I very much understand. And trust me, I've stepped in it. I've made mistakes over the years. I have done things and said things using, not necessarily using my gifts, but I've said and done things that have thrown people off and made them uncomfortable, especially when it comes to my gifts. So I have really just not shared a lot because I don't want to make people uncomfortable. So as I tell these stories, they're going to be as anonymized, as anonymous as possible, just so that people don't get upset. If you hear something that maybe resonates with you, totally reach out. I'm an open book. I will tell you whatever, like I'll tell you the stories like directly as they relate to you. Back to my story. My son, right after he was born, I started to have panic attacks and like this impending fear of death. I assumed, since I had just created life, it makes your own mortality more real. So I had assumed that's what it came down to. And maybe I'm afraid of the things that I don't know, which is weird. I have a big fear of the unknown. So I thought maybe that's the case. Maybe this was the fear of the unknown, even though my whole life I'd seen the other side. I don't know. Like there's this piece. So I just kind of chalked it up for that. But I remember one day at a barbecue, my family was talking about a family friend, someone that we've known for a while. And one of the people in that family was, had a terminal illness and was very much facing death in their eyes, like it was like right there. They knew it was coming. As soon as I heard that, my panic attacks, my fear of death went away, which I thought was very, very, very strange. And it was strange enough to where it made me pay attention because they were just suddenly gone. It was like this lifting of that. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but it freaked me out because it freaked me out. I've had since that moment, I've had other experiences where I get this overwhelming fear of death. I found out that when I understood who it was, I found that the importance was to send, there was usually a message that came along. I think a lot of times when we're facing death, and this is my own experience, based on the energies that I've experienced. So I do not have a near-death experience that I can remember. So these experiences are based on the energies that get projected at me. But what I have found is people are very afraid. They think they're alone. Um, uh, we have religion. It talks about God, Christian religion. I'm Christian, talks about God, talks about heaven and hell and all of the other things. The angels are talked about, but a lot of it's more just real physical here. So there's not always that true understanding of what's going to happen on the other side. Now, granted, like people that truly are connected, this is not something they think of. They're very at peace with their death. And even the people that maybe aren't truly connected, but are very at peace with the idea of there may be nothing after death, they're not afraid of it. But those that are, I don't know, what I get is people that are very scared and afraid of what's coming next. We can't understand nothing. And a lot of times what it is we're stuck. If you close your eyes and you think, what goes on in your head? When you die, what is there? There's the only thing that's in your head is you. And where does our consciousness go? What happens with that? There's a lot of anxiety around that. I even get some anxiety talking about it because I can feel it. But anyway, I found when I identified where the energy was coming from, usually there was a message attached to it. Sometimes the message was as simply as, I hear you. You're not alone. Your cries in the dark, I can hear you, which means other people can hear you, which means there's more than just you in this world. There's more. When you pass on, that's not the end of you. I've since gotten, this is funny, I've thought I've always had this, but this is kind of a recent within the last couple of years. I can really connect to the other side now. I can really, like, if you have a loved one that passes on, it used to be that when loved ones passed on, they would come and visit me in my dreams. Now it's in the waking. I can very much connect with that. I can connect with the other side much more easily, much more readily. So I'm able to connect to the other side so I can give messages a lot more easily. And before it was very like random, but now I can do it very much on demand. I can connect to see what's going on and how to help. That's kind of my journey. There's other things that I can do. I can sense auras. I can hear thoughts. Anyway, that's kind of an overview of my gifts. I will probably start telling some stories of people that I've helped over the years, but we're not going to get into that right now. I think I will save that for the next one. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate everything. And I hope you join me on this journey of sharing my gifts and some growth moments and, some stories about unfinished business and the other side. So thank you so much. And I will see you later.